First things first, how are you?
Good, good.
It's good
Happy
to
to
hear.
be in Amsterdam
First time?
for the first time, yeah.
Okay. Well, I hope you enjoy it.
Yeah.
Before we get into the album, I'd like to jump back to the beginning. Do you remember when this dream of music first started for you?
Um, I must have been perhaps, 7 years old, maybe six, listening to music from this tiny battery-powered radio from my house and feeling transported by this music to just a different part of the world. It sounded so strangely different. The language was different. The sounds were different. It felt as though I was taking a spaceship to, just another universe. And so I revisited it regularly since I became attached to that journey into that other universe. And
Right.
perhaps I think those were the early sparks of the musical interest.
Did you, when you heard this music, did you immediately start singing, or were you singing even before?
Um, I was perhaps, singing the way a child would sing,
Sure.
not necessarily
Sure.
singing, but just, I want milk, or trying to make melodies around games and and all that kind of stuff. But I never really tried to construct any melodies of my own until I think perhaps after that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, what were the first kind of artists that struck your interest? That kind of, like you say, transported you to this other world.
Those would be rock bands,
Okay.
Nirvana, Radiohead, stuff like that.
Because it's a very distinct, especially Nirvana and Radiohead in the '90s. That was a big thing, of course.
Yeah, totally.
What did it make you feel? What did it make you think that kind of music?
It made me think, what the heck is this? It was just, it was very strange to hear that at a very young age. It was just too different from anything. Of course, it sparked my interest. I mean, of course it did. It was just this very bizarre sound that I'd never heard before, and then I turn on the radio, and it's just there, and I'm just like, what is this? I want to learn what they're saying. My interest in the English language began then. I was just curious, what's this language? What are they talking about? I wanna know what they're saying. So I think my interest in both the English language and music was, sparked there, both at the same time.
Was this an interest that you very much did by yourself, or was it shared with the people around you?
It was not shared at all.
Okay.
It was something that I did very privately. Um, I think my sisters loved music. They introduced me to some, rock songs too. Back in the day, they would bring some CDs home. We liked music, but it's not. No one really. It wasn't a part of our culture back home. The arts were not something that were ingrained in the culture. So, taking that interest from the basic level of appreciation was just something that I did privately in my own time. It's just something within me that I was pursuing privately. No one knew about it. I was having a conversation with my aunt recently, who's known me all my life, and she's seen videos of me singing, and she doesn't believe it's my voice. She thinks someone is lip singing for me.
Okay.
So it's that, just the kind of thing where I just did this thing privately, and no one really knew around me.
As your passion for music grew stronger, and obviously you discovered at a certain point the music of Bob Dylan and those kinds of artists. Like you say, the culture wasn't such that becoming an artist was a viable option in a way. So when did that point come for you where you thought, but this is the thing I'm gonna chase. I want to make music, and this is what I'm gonna do.
You know, I think it's always been there, perhaps just stifled. Just from that early age of listening to those songs, it's just there's always been that desire for that to sing and to write songs and to play songs, and then it was just the kind of thing where if I mentioned it, it was just shut down right away. So it was just stifled over time, and it had to get to a point where I just had to, just step out of it and and do it and do what I wanted to do. And I think discovering folk music in high school through Bob Dylan and Neil Young and other troubadours like that had a very strong impact for me. I think partly is because around that time in high school I was a bit lost too. I was just in this place where I was, I loved music so much, and everyone around me was like, you can't do that. All forces were piling up against me, and I felt lost, confused, and lonely and sad, and I needed that inspiration. When I found that music, it was just very starkly different from anything that I'd had before, and that sparked another level of inspiration. That a certain rebellion for culture and for the past and for anything else but the things that I want to do, and that might have been perhaps when that wheel to put one foot in front of the next and try to pursue a career as a storyteller and a folk singer began.
But I can imagine, especially at a relatively young age, to decide to go to a different country, half the world away,
Yeah.
and to pursue that dream. Was it a difficult decision for you, or was your heart already set?
Very sad.
Okay.
Very sad. As soon as I, discovered folk music, discovered Bob Dylan, and I started trying to move to the States. I tried all sorts of things, and I did a lot of those things privately. Just no one knew I was doing them. I was, apply for schools in Minnesota because I thought I had this romantic idea of moving there because Dylan was from there. I applied for jobs, anything. I just tried all kinds of things to move there because as soon as I realized that this was something I wanted to do, I also quickly realized that I couldn't do it there.
Sure.
There was no infrastructure to support it, for starters, and everyone around me was just, you can't do it. So I needed to leave. Sure. I needed to say goodbye. I had to, and so I started trying to do that, and eventually, when it worked out, I was very much ready for it. My heart was set to.
So your mind was already there.
It was there. It was there.
Fair enough.
I was just catching up to my mind already, but
Sure.
yeah.
How much were you writing back home before you moved to Minnesota? Did you already have a notebook full of kind of little stories and?
Yeah, absolutely, and I think part of the reason why I found this kinship with folk music when I discovered it was when I realized it was very rooted in storytelling,
Right.
and that was something I was already doing just because I loved to do since I was a child. As soon as I learned English, and perhaps that had something to do with my interest in language as well. It's because I just love to tell stories and write poems. And so, when I discovered that music, it just felt like, oh, well, that's obviously what I'm supposed to do. I'm supposed to put these stories into some kind of melody and turn it into a song. And I suppose it's called a folk song. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool. This is just destiny was awaiting me here. So I think I talked over you. What was your question?
No, that's, you kind of answered it, because once you then arrive, I suppose, in Minnesota, because I read that back home you didn't have the ability to pick up an instrument.
Right, right.
So once you kind of delved into the guitar as well, and combining that music element with that storytelling element, did then the songs just started coming?
Yes, yes. I suppose you were asking about, writing. Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah. Yes. So I had, I mean, when I moved to the States, I had a book of songs, hundreds of songs in there, just stories, really, just little poems, streams of consciousness, things that would turn into songs. And I lost it.
Okay.
I lost it.
Okay.
I lost it. I think I lost it at the airport or something.
Oh,
wow. And so I've been always wary about writing songs down on paper now. I try to do it on my computer, but I always wrote, just I do it almost compulsively.
Okay.
It's something of a problem, actually.
Yeah, I was gonna say, to this day you just every day.
It's just there's just stuff they need to come out. There's a traffic of words and melodies, and they have to go. They need to leave, or else they'll drive me insane, which they regularly do if I don't. If I take too big of a break from writing and coming up with songs or whatever. I sort of feel like these ideas, they're piling up in my brain. They're driving me crazy, almost. And so it's almost like a survival thing. It's just something I have to do for my general sanity.
And then it's, I assume, then very cathartic. It's very much a release in a way.
Absolutely, yeah. For that reason, because if I don't, then gonna go crazy, and you never know what's gonna happen.